Hey everyone, okay, coming at you with another video on some more of the less talked about but in very essentially important nuances, TTPs, whatever, when it comes to your Minuteman bugging out, whatever you want to call it, whatever the situation is, the undergarments and apparel and clothing to wear out in the sticks in austere conditions and things like that. Different strokes for different folks in a lot of ways, okay? So we'll kind of go by climate, region, conditional things like that, because the weather obviously is going to play the primary and the biggest role continually throughout operations in the field. Okay, so we're going to cover this here. We're going to get in depth with the skivvies, the socks, and everything that is worn to keep yourself cool, keep yourself dry, keep yourself warm, whatever it is for all these situations. We're going to get deep into it here, okay? Let's start with moderate and deciduous climates like what I'm in. I'm actually in the bottom of the subarctic region, being very near Canada and the northern Midwest in the United States. So what I need is going to be different from what somebody needs in Arizona or in Iraq or even in Florida, Georgia, Southern Carolinas, whatever it is. Regionally, they are different. So you're going to really end up using different garments, you know, for all these different climates. For my climate, there's a lot of transitional periods. You know, we get 4 full seasons, but our winters are very long up here, okay? So that means we need a little bit more robust clothing, especially when it's warm out, but it depends on the time of the year. During the late spring and going into summer like it is right now, yeah, it gets warm. It gets up in the 90-degree Fahrenheit temperatures and all that, you know. Even 100 sometimes, you know. Not quite as hot as it is in Texas or Arizona or in Florida or whatever, but it still gets hot up here, and it is a bit humid. So with those considerations, we'll start that off because it applies to your more humid, swampy environments and your arid environments in context as well. You're not going to want to wear wool socks. You're going to want to wear a thinner, moisture-wicking performance sock. These are some Under Armour ones, you know, that have some good stretch, aren't as thick, but will still, you know, protect your feet as you need to, wearing your foot gear and things like that, and will dry quickly, okay? Same goes for undergarments. You're not going to want a heavier, thicker undergarment. You're going to want something that is more performance-driven, is light, it can breathe, and it can dry quickly. Something like these Under Armour performance undergarments. And I'm gonna put that out there right now too. Like your tighty whities, your standard briefs, no, they're a no-go. We wore tanny panties. We called them tanny panties in the military because when we transitioned to tan stuff underneath the UCP ACU and stuff, underwear like that, high-cut underwear, briefs and that are a no-no. Same with the ladies. Don't be wearing a thong out in the field. You're going to be really uncomfortable unless you're just used to it, but I wouldn't recommend it. So you're going to want to go with a boxer brief for the most part, okay? Something that does help protect your legs a little bit, especially when you're rucking and walking a lot. So if your thighs do rub together, that's a little bit of a buffer for you when they're a little bit longer, okay? But again, so you want to prevent some of that rubbing and chafing and stuff. So those are a better route to go. Again, when it's warmer, more humid and things like that, you want something lighter that breathes and will dry quickly. Stuff like that, socks like these, shirts. This is a softy, dry release shirt, so it dries very quickly. It's not the thinnest, but it is thinner. And that same goes for this kind of shirt. This is a Nike Pro Combat shirt, okay? Notice it's got this like venting and everything, and it's extremely light. This is a long sleeve because under extreme sun, you wouldn't think it, but you do need something to help kind of cover yourself and protect yourself. That's why you see Middle Easterners wearing these long flowing white outfits, you know, apart from everything else that they wear, because they need to protect themselves from the sun a little bit. It's the same with military uniforms. Yeah, you can go short sleeves and get used to it, but you're going to get sunburned at some point, and you got to keep the melanoma risk down, okay? So you can always cut the sleeves off this, but thin, breathable, dries quickly, okay? And that's for hotter temperatures in the seasons, hotter climates, wet climates, things like that, okay? Transitionally into early spring or in the fall and autumn, if you have those seasons, like I do here, it starts to cool down a little bit, but it's not super cold yet. It can at night, the later it gets into fall and in the early presence of spring. So then you're going to be wearing more standard cotton boxer briefs, more standard cotton socks, and these are some Hanes X-Temp Performance socks, so they're good for warmer weather as well as when it gets a little bit cooler out. They dry quickly. These are going to dry as quick, so just like with any of your TTPs and everything else when it comes to operating in the field, you always have extra pairs of undergarments and socks, no matter what. You're going out for 3 days, you should have at least 5 changes of socks and 4 changes of undergarments if you're going to do that. Okay, and maybe even another pair or 2 more than that, okay? Same applies, this shirt's good for that kind of thing. Once it starts cooling off more and you're maybe operating at night, a thinner waffle type thermal might be good if you need it, if you're really getting that cold or you feel like it's getting that cold. You might want to have to put some of those on to warm yourself up at night. Same goes for your sleep system. You have to understand sleep. We can cover that, sleep systems, in a different video though. So when it comes to cold weather, cold temperatures, and up here, I mean, in the heart of winter, even during the day, it can get minus 50 Fahrenheit, okay? Some of my friends over in Dakota, up in Alaska, Maine, y'all know what I'm talking about too, okay? So that's when you're going to be transitioning and you're going to be wearing wool socks, okay? You're going to be using wool socks a lot. They do help wick moisture away from your feet and away from your body. You're going to have to change them though. I always recommend changing pairs of socks before you lay down and go to sleep. And then in the morning, if you feel like your socks are a little bit damp, put on another dry pair and get those dried out in a fire or whatever, okay? Near a fire and stuff. When it comes to actual undergarments, you know, stick with cotton, but you're going to be going to waffle thermals as another layer, okay? Winter is about layers. But at the same time, when you start working really hard in winter, you might have to take some layers off because you start sweating and you're working hard. You work extremely hard in the winter and you have to consume, you know, twice as many calories and everything too. Hydration is a big thing too. We can talk about that a little bit later though too. You're going to end up using thermal systems, okay? And whether you're using an ICWIX type military extreme cold weather multi-layer system and surplus system, or you're going and getting a bunch of different components like I do and getting what you need and then rolling with your uniform over that, and it could be a standard, you know, ripstop uniform as long as you have those layers and you have your protection, okay? Like I talked about before with boots and stuff, you know, different climates and seasons and stuff are going to relegate different foot gear and their purposes. Same goes for all your undergarments, man. So winter, you're going to work harder. You need to keep warm, but at the same time, you may have to take off some layers, okay? With thermals, they're going to moisture wick a little bit too, and they may take a little while to dry too. That's why having a fire or some kind of heat source or ability to stay warm is extremely important. Not just to stay warm, but also to help kind of dry your clothing out as possible, as able. So that's a huge thing, you know. So layers for winter, but you realize you may have to take them off as you start working a little bit harder. You do not want to stay wet in winter. You will start to get hypothermia and risk frostbite and other things on parts of the body, okay? So you need to be having changes of socks and your undergarments and everything. Same with thermals. Have at least 2 sets of thermals, okay? So you can switch between them. But that's how it goes. You want to wear a dry release t-shirt or a cotton t-shirt or something underneath your thermals, yeah, go for it. But again, if that gets wet too, you're going to have to change it, okay? So with winter, you're carrying more equipment, you're carrying more clothing because of those issues. With more tropical, swampy, and arid climates, you don't have to carry as much, but you're still going to get wet at times. You're going to sweat and everything else. So then you need to have changes so that you can dry the other stuff out, okay? So that's really what it boils down to with all that stuff. So when it's hot out, thin, ventilating, quick drying performance clothings, okay? In the intermediary temperatures and stuff like that, a little bit thicker with cotton and things like that, cotton socks, or a light wool sock, again, have changes for them. And stuff that can also dry relatively quick, but is going to keep you warm, okay? Then in winter, you're going to be layering. You're going to be layering, and you're probably going to take off layers at some point and then have to put them back on and interchange, you know, because once you dry out and kind of cool down a little bit, once you've taken layers off and then you got to put layers back on, you're going to be going back and forth. You're going to have extra stuff when it comes for winter, okay? So make sure you have changes, extra changes of all that too. Again, depending on your sustainability and how long you're going to be out there in the environment and doing all this stuff, guess what? You're going to need to bring a lot with you. Whether some of it you can get, much like with long-term sustainment with the packs and everything, you're going to put some of that aside at your little OP or your home base, your homestead, whatever. But then when you go out for a day or two with doing patrols or you're scavenging or going hunting or whatever, you know, you have to have extra changes of stuff with you too, okay? And then you can go back to your OP and get it changed out, get dry stuff and all that stuff. But that's really the gist of it. You need to keep yourself dry. Understand the climate and conditions that you're working in and how you can utilize your essential undergarments to keep yourself ventilated and dry and prevent issues like gangrene, severe water inundation, hypothermia, frostbite, things like that, okay? So like all that stuff you have to consider, okay? Now, the final point, when it comes to going commando, I mean, yeah, we did it in the military too. By all means, if you don't want to wear undergarments and you just want to go commando in your uniform, if your environment allows that without, you know, literally freezing your nuts off or anything, we cannot do that up here. But down in the South, you know, in Florida or whatever, yeah, fucking go commando if you want, man. If that helps, it mitigates having to have certain elements of clothing, but at the same time, it's nice because they will help pull moisture away from your body because you're still going to sweat going commando. Okay? I would not advise never wearing socks, even though sometimes in jungle conditions that may be important. You may have to take your socks off and put your jungle boots back on to forge a river. Go for it. Keep those socks dry though and put them back on once you've kind of gotten across, dried your feet off a little bit. Okay? They're an essential thing to protect your feet. Both from the elements and the conditions that you're in, but also from your boots. Because you can get some gnarly injuries on your feet from your boots. Also, don't wear your boots too tight. You know, wear them snug. I wear mine pretty snug. But you can't wear them too tight. You need to make sure that they're a good size for your feet. You will get ingrown toenails and you will have other issues with your feet if your boots are too small and way too tight. Okay? There's a Goldilocks point in there for your feet, okay? And with undergarments, you need something that's a little supportive, but again, something that's going to help pull moisture from the body and dries quick, keeps you warm, whatever it is. Same goes for your under trousers, whether thermals or whatever, your shirts, things like that. Okay, so these are just all things that you need to take into consideration and have quality stuff. It doesn't have to be super expensive. Now, some of this is. These Under Armour thermals are expensive. Get the they sell them like Cabela's as red something or another. They make exceptional thermals that do not cost that much. Really good aftermarket thermals that I highly recommend in different levels, because like base level 2 compared to base level 4, that's for more not as cold temperatures, you know, more intermediate. Level 4, that's like you're fucking climbing a mountain, or you're in the harsh winters like I am up here, okay? In the heart of negative temperatures all the time and stuff, okay? So different levels for different thermals too. And that goes for moisture wicking shirts and things like that. A lot of people have moisture wicking shirt options now, but there you go. Those are just things people need to think about, you know, and need to understand with the environments that they're working in, and the conditions that you're in and stuff. You know, up here, yeah, it's really cold, but it's really wet a lot of the time too, because we have a lot of snow and ice and everything during our long winters. So having elements of stuff that can dry fast and is good at moisture wicking, like wool socks and merino wool and dry release shirts under thermals and moisture wicking thermals and all that, that is exceptional to have. So these are just a lot of the factors excuse me, a lot of the factors that people need to understand when it comes to the core essentials, the unmentionables of clothing that is worn under all the cool camouflage and uniforms and everything. People do not talk about this stuff a lot of the time. Going through training in the military, yeah, you get briefings on this stuff and things like that, and they teach you about hygiene in the field and things like that, but in the civilian world, they don't really talk about that all that much, okay? They give you all these options in the store, but they don't tell you, you know, how you should be using them and things like that. So these are things that hopefully are going to come across to be helpful for some people out there, okay? Depends on your climate and your environment, austere conditions, long-term sustainability, and comfort while doing what they're supposed to do to help you thrive out in the sticks, out in the wild, or whatever it is, okay? So there you go, folks. That is covering all of the fun goodies that come with protecting your fucking nuts and your feet, okay? Along with everything else. So, hope you enjoy, and yeah, more of these coming soon. We'll talk about other stuff like sleep systems and everything. Metal up. Out.